Hello and welcome to CMMI Tech Talk. In this video, as part of our deep dive series on practice areas, we'll provide a brief overview of the Enabling Safety eSafe practice area, the only practice area in the safety domain. In this video, we shall discuss the intent of this practice area and look at what value it can provide to an organization, as well as diving into the individual practices to see how they can be used to improve an organization's safety processes. Regardless of the nature of the work that an organization is involved in, safety considerations will play some role in ensuring the normal, smooth operation of the organization. In most countries around the world, employers have a legal duty of care to their employees to ensure that they have a safe working environment. So this aspect of safety is common to all types of organizations. However, many may need to consider the issue of safety from many other viewpoints, not least in terms of the implications of safety on products and services that they deliver to their customers. For example, aerospace, medical, or transport systems may need extremely high levels of safety assurance, often termed safety critical, to ensure that potential loss or harm to life through the use of these systems is effectively removed. Similarly, devices that are operated in hazardous environments such as aircraft hangars may need to be designed to be intrinsically safe to ensure that the internal electrical wiring could not inadvertently ignite flammable gases. eSafe provides a framework of practices to help identify safety hazards and implement processes that can defend against the associated risks. eSafe falls within the Managing Security and Safety Capability area, which is in the Enabling category. As with the study of all practice areas, the best place to start is with the high-level intent and value statements. Intent minimizes and mitigates safety risks within the tolerance parameters and constraints of operational effectiveness, time, and cost. Value reduces the residual safety hazard risk to an acceptable tolerance level. From this, we can think of the concept of safety in terms of risk. It is virtually impossible to remove all risk from any activity, but as the intent statement suggests, organizations can minimize and mitigate safety risks until they reach a level at which they can tolerate them. Exactly what this level should be will depend on the nature of the organization and activity in question. For a safety-critical avionics system, we will have a very low tolerance to any safety hazards. Although note that zero tolerance is generally seen as an impossible and impractical target. However, for a home entertainment system, an organization might have a much higher level of tolerance. This idea of an acceptable tolerance level is a key concept in the subject of safety, and many organizations adopt an as safe as reasonably practicable approach, or ASARP as it is sometimes known. This concept is used to balance an organization's risk tolerance to safety hazards against the cost of mitigating against them. A famous case in the 1970s was one involving the Ford Pinto. Serious safety concerns were deliberately ignored because it was deemed more cost-effective to pay any compensation claims arising from injury due to a known hazard than to recall the entire production fleet and address the hazard which caused the gas tank to explode in a crash. Although this is an extreme example, it exemplifies the considerations that need to be made. The practice summary table shows that the enabling safety practices are split across 3 practice group levels, demonstrating the traditional evolutionary path towards increasing capability. The practices at level 1 provide a basic initial approach to identifying and addressing safety hazards, whereas at level 2, this is developed into a more considered, planned, and managed approach that addresses safety more holistically, underpinned by specific safety objectives. At level 3, this is taken further by adopting an organizational viewpoint and including activities to improve the organization's safety response. Now, let us look at the individual practices. eSafe 1.1 looks for organizations to identify and record safety needs and hazards. According to the CMMI glossary, a hazard is a condition or event that poses a risk to safety. Understanding what hazards organizations may have to deal with is the first stage in addressing them and creating the foundation of a more considered overall approach. As well as identifying hazards, this practice is also looking to have organizations understand their safety needs. This points to a more general consideration of safety than just individual hazards. Safety needs might include understanding any legal or regulatory requirements relating to safety considerations, as these will feed into an organization's acceptable tolerance levels. Note, however, that at level 1, this is an ad hoc activity. Practice eSafe 1.2 complements the previous practice by seeking to do something about the hazards and needs that have been identified. There is little value in identifying a set of safety hazards if an organization does not do something about them. An organization may be prepared to tolerate some of them, but usually they would want to try and mitigate hazards that are seen as particularly damaging while being mindful of the concept of ASARP. A high degree of pragmatism needs to be employed when addressing safety hazards. As an example, consider a restaurant kitchen environment. Chefs routinely need to use extremely sharp knives to prepare food in what can be very hectic and dynamic environments. This is a significant potential safety hazard. However, the options to mitigate this hazard are limited. A kitchen could reduce the risk by giving the chefs blunter knives, but this would prevent them from working effectively, and both food quality and productivity would decrease. The kitchen could insist that they wear thick protective gloves, but again, this would prevent them from doing their job effectively and would likely introduce hygiene hazards. The kitchen could set aside a specific food preparation area away from the main part of the kitchen so that the chefs are not so exposed to the hugely dynamic environment around them, and thereby reduce the hazards relating to distraction or accidentally being nudged by a coworker. But this could change the flow of the whole kitchen process. In practice, most kitchens tend to rely on the skill and experience of their staff, so the main mitigation is training and experience. Note also that eSafe 1.2 specifically talks about addressing prioritized needs and hazards. eSafe 1.1 does not explicitly state that identified needs and hazards should be prioritized. However, prioritization is a sensible discipline to establish. Not all hazards and needs will be of equal importance, and since all organizations are ultimately resource constrained to some degree, it is important to identify and address the most important ones first to ensure the most efficient use of our safety-related resources. The Level 2 practices builds more detail upon these foundational practices. eSafe 2.1 encourages organizations to focus on critical safety needs and constraints, aligning them to the business by defining safety objectives. Critical safety needs are ones that can prevent organizations from achieving their objectives. For example, if there is strong health and safety legislation in place within the country in which the organization operates, ensuring these legal requirements are met would be essential for the continued operation of the business. It would be sensible to put in place an objective to capture this and focus attention on the legal requirements. As well as legal or compliance issues, an organization's safety objectives should align with their organizational business objectives. As with any other organizational objective, we then need to ensure that these are communicated throughout the organization so that staff are aware of them. eSafe 2.2 directs an organization to develop, maintain, and follow an approach to workplace environment safety. Whereas the Level 1 practices are necessary, the word approach implies a planned and managed set of activities outlining how an organization will ensure that their workplace represents a safe working environment for their employees. When developing an approach, organizations should be mindful of historical safety hazard records to ensure that they learn the lessons of the past and factoring in changes to how work is performed over time. Organizations also need to be aware that safety hazards may not be restricted to obvious physical issues such as electrical safety, trip hazards, etc. A safe working environment might also consider issues such as ergonomics, where the hazard may occur over time, such as poor workstation layout, persistent background noise, and so on. While an organization must ensure that its staff has a safe working environment, it is equally essential that the products and services the organization delivers to its customers are also safe. eSafe 2.3 is the practice that asks organizations to put in place an approach to address the safety aspects of their solutions and products. They need to carefully consider how their customers will use and interact with their products to ensure that any hazards are minimized as far as reasonably practical. This practice starts very early on in a development cycle. Organizations should be designing safety into their products as necessary. So this is initially an exercise in identifying functional safety requirements for their products and ensuring our development processes also adhere to a safety-conscious approach. Organizations need to be mindful of the concept of ASARP. Therefore, a lot of this practice is concerned with aligning safety provisions with our business and mission objectives and constraints. The Level 3 practices then provide additional focused safety as an organizational function. Safety is a highly specialized area, so it may be inefficient for an organization's safety expertise to be distributed throughout the organization, with each department or project having their specialist resources. Consequently, eSafe 3.1 encourages organizations to establish an organizational safety capability. This organizational function would ensure compliance with and awareness of relevant legislation or requirements, providing safety-related training, helping establish safety hazard management protocols, and any other safety-related activities. eSafe 3.2 then looks for the organization to periodically evaluate their performance against its safety objectives. The hazard environment is likely to change over time, so the safety approach must be continuously monitored and evaluated to ensure that the objectives remain current and that they are being met. When a safety issue occurs, it is also essential to understand why it happened and what, if anything, needs to change with our safety approach to ensure a repeat does not occur. Finally, eSafe 3.3 calls for an organization to establish and follow key safety control strategies. These are well-documented, effective strategies for dealing with specific types of hazards. Anyone who has worked in an office or other place of work outside their own home will probably be familiar with fire evacuation drills. This type of safety control is a pre-programmed response in which all staff have a role to play and includes things like evacuating the building quickly, but carefully, acting as a fire marshal, or alerting emergency services. It makes sense for this to be an organizationally defined coordinated response rather than relying on each part of the business doing its own thing in the event of a fire. Many other types of control such as this can be implemented, and some deal with functional product safety, not just environmental safety. Controls should be monitored for effectiveness and improved when necessary. These then are the practices of the enabling safety practice area, which we can summarize as follows. Identify, document, prioritize, and address safety needs and hazards. Establish safety objectives to capture critical safety needs and constraints. Develop approaches to deal with both workplace and solution safety issues. Establish an organizational safety capability. Evaluate safety provisions periodically and address actions arising from the results. Establish and use organizationally defined safety strategies. Thank you for joining us for this CMMI Tech Talk. If you have any questions, please contact us at support.isaca.org.